Bam. Okay, here we are. All right, buenos dias, que onda, que paso, amigos? John's Moto Garage. Welcome back to the channel. As you can see, today we're going to be taking the XSR 700 out for a ride, and personally I'm a big fan of this motorcycle, and I'm on record saying multiple times how I think this is an awesome beginner motorcycle. However, the more I ride the bike, the more trepidation, the more reluctant I am to actually recommend this to beginners as a first bike. Today I'm going to talk about one primary reason why I think this is actually not a good bike for beginners, why it's actually very dangerous for beginners. You know the old adage, a wolf in sheep's clothes? I feel like that's kind of what this bike is in a nutshell for beginners, but I will also go over a few reasons why it really does make a great beginner motorcycle as well. Ultimately, just like with everything else, it's going to come down to the individual, what you're looking to accomplish on a bike, how disciplined you are, all that good stuff. Every bike potentially can be dangerous, and so this one's no different, but there are a few things about this that make it even more dangerous on that like danger scale. So without further ado, let's jump on it. And this is a 2017 Yamaha XSR 700. We are going to include in this and kind of just lump it all together, the XSR 700, FZ-07, mt-07, because they're basically all the same motorcycle. And if you're wondering, this one is equipped with an M4 exhaust. Nice aftermarket exhaust, has that deep rumble to it, pretty dang loud. And this, my friends, is the number one reason why I actually do not think this is a good bike for beginners. Not just the fact that you can do a wheelie, you can do wheelies on lots of motorcycles, but the fact that this wheel comes up so easily, and it's almost like the bike wants to be on one wheel. I think it's important, I think it's super important for a beginner, if they're looking at this motorcycle, to understand just how real of a danger that is. So even if you were to go out and get like a CBR 600 sport bike, not all of those motorcycles will just pop up on one wheel at will. This motorcycle, the first time I ever rode an FZ-07, I went to do a 0 to 60 takeoff, and the front wheel lifted up without a clutch or anything. And so anybody who's ridden a lot of bikes will tell you that's a scary thing, especially if you're not expecting it. So the ease with which this bike will come up on one wheel, that is the number one reason why I think it can be very dangerous for beginners. Because it can just take the crack of a throttle, you hit a bump and you accidentally crack the throttle if you're in like second or third gear, and that wheel can come up quickly. If you know you're that dude who's got the need for speed and you push it and you're always just kind of pushing the envelope, I would start out with something like a DRZ, where you actually have to learn the proper technique to get the wheel up in the air, as opposed to something like this where you accidentally just push the limits a little bit and the wheel's floating up, if not looping you on the motorcycle. It's just too easy to wheelie on this thing, so don't be deceived, man. Do not be deceived. Is that a duck? Alright, so that's the primary reason why the bike is dangerous for beginner riders. But let's face it, a lot of beginners, they're going to ignore that. I would have ignored that, and I probably would have still been tempted to buy the motorcycle. So what makes this an appealing option for beginner riders? The number one thing is going to be the weight and kind of the ergos of this motorcycle. It's a pretty lightweight motorcycle. It's only around 400 pounds, and it's got a pretty neutral riding position. It's not super aggressive. It's comfortable. Also, you've only got about a 31-inch seat height, and so for your average, size rider, I'm 5'8", I can flat foot on both, flat foot easily. My wife's about 5'5", she's able to touch the ground pretty easily, and with the narrow, kind of low center of gravity, it just makes for a very manageable option for beginners. You've also got nice things like a gear indicator. These can come with ABS, and so those are kind of safety features or conveniences that, again, are going to be great if you're just starting out on 2 wheels. Another thing that's great about these bikes is they're not overly powered. They've got about 74, 75 horsepower, 50 foot-pounds of torque. So by today's standards, where you've got your super sports that have like, you know, 200 plus horsepower, even a lot of your V-twins, 120 horsepower, this thing's on the lower range for that. But like I said, where you get in trouble is just the torque on this bike. I mean, I'm in 3rd gear. This is to give you an example. 3rd gear, 24 miles per hour. That thing will pop right up on 1 wheel. Another thing that makes it a nice option for beginners, doesn't really make the bike good for beginners, but the price point, it's a pretty inexpensive option, so you can get into it for relatively low cost. 7,500 MSRP, I want to say, on the used market, 4,000 to 5,000 bucks all day, at least for the FZ-07, mt-07s. I gotta tell you, man, this is one thing that I'm just kind of now discovering, and I've mentioned it before. This bike on the freeway, it can handle it, but I always feel like I'm gonna get blown over on this bike. And even just now doing like a little 0 to 100 run, it feels like that front end just is floating, man. I feel like I gotta almost like put extra pressure on the front end just with those quick little spurts, and that scares me a little bit. Let's try this again real quick. My gosh. So that's another thing that scares me about this bike. It has the potential to get up to like, you know, 115, 120. I don't know how fast I was going there, but it does not feel stable. It does not feel stable. And then just a quick acceleration, 0 to 60, this thing's floating up. And I hit rev limiter a couple times because honestly I was too scared holding on for dear life than you know, paying attention to the RPMs. But that front wheel like floats up 0 to 60. You got to be careful, man. You got to be careful. I think it's time we got out of here. So that's something. It's got the speed, it's got the power. Like you can see, you can get up to 110, 115, 120. 0 to 60 on this, I want to say, is like 3.3 or thereabouts. But yeah, that's one more reason why, ooh, it actually kind of scares me, the thought of putting a beginner on this. I feel like I'm about to just like get a gust of wind and pick up and catch flight on this thing, man. That's where something like this Sportster 1200 or 883 that we see up here can be a little bit more appealing option, because you don't have that capability on a bike like that. It's just got the stability, man, and this thing just doesn't feel like it has it. You can sit on here and roll at like 75, 80 miles per hour. It's got the 6th gear. As mentioned before, it does feel a little unstable at these higher speeds, in my opinion, but it's doable. It's doable for sure. There's something I may not have mentioned. The handling, very manageable, again, for new riders. So in conclusion, I am obviously a big fan of the bike. I can't rant and rave enough about it, but there are those things that, upon further investigation or inspection, lead me to believe this actually is not necessarily as great a beginner option as we may make it out to be. And so just like everything else, I guess the idea of this video is know what you're getting yourself into, understand the danger that's involved. Because one thing I'll tell you is not every bike is alike. You are not going to be able to jump on a Honda Shadow and just accidentally throw that thing up into a wheelie. So you've got all the other dangers that come along with riding. You got to observe your surroundings, you got to, you know, watch riders around you, make sure you're doing everything in your control. But that's one thing you don't have to worry about on a bike like that. It's something you don't have to worry about on a bike like a Yamaha Bolt. It's something you don't have to worry about even on a bike like a Suzuki DRZ 400 or a Honda Crom. All great beginner options. It is definitely something you got to worry about on something like this. The first time you go to do a 0 to 60 takeoff and that front wheel comes looping up, if you don't know what you're getting yourself into, that's the difference between the wheel floating up and completely looping back. So there are dangers that come along with this bike, specifically, that you're not going to get with your other motorcycles, or at least not all of them. Anyway, there you have it, guys. John's Moto Garage, the XSR 700, one of my favorite motorcycles, a ton of fun to ride. If you're a beginner, beginner beware. If you're an advanced intermediate, it doesn't matter where you are, just be careful on this motorcycle. Definitely a wild ride for sure. Like and subscribe if you dig the content, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. John's Moto Garage. Adios, nos vemos, hasta luego. Look like a good spot for a photo op, actually.